Hey there, and welcome to another episode of One Email, Two Takes, the weekly sales hacker show where myself and my co host, Christina Finsa, take emails that are either sent to us or submitted to us for feedback, and we tear them down and then we rewrite them. So we offer our two takes on the emails. So I'm riding solo this week. So what I did was I picked a cold email in my inbox that also had a follow up. Now, this episode is going to be a little bit more geared towards the startups of the world, just because it was definitely a startup that reached out to me. But that said, I think there's still some really valuable lessons to learn, especially if you're in a later stage company and you're trying to either break into a new market or launch a new product. So let me share my screen. Now, what you'll see here is I've kind of titled this Twitter bio or cold email. And there's a specific reason for that, which is the subject line almost read like a Twitter bio. It said basically my ex-employer, usage-based billing, which if you're in the startup world, you use that like X company almost to give yourself a little extra credibility when you're talking to investors. It's something that works a little bit more on the early stage, but it's not something that necessarily matters to your customers. So I got kind of a kick out of it, but let's actually read the email. Hi, Will. After exploring a number of tools similar to Lavender and am impressed with what you all have built. A little bit of a syntax error there. As you all grow, I'm interested to know how you will bill on usage. Interesting question. Having finalized unique commercial terms with varying levels of commitment while at my previous employer, it was an easy decision to join a team that is solving the next part of this complex equation, billing and invoicing. Our founding team at current employer comes from Asana, Stripe, Plaid, Samsara, where we collectively experience the pains that are associated with billing for a usage-based price model, and we've built a developer-first billing system designed to adapt to your business model. Curious, is billing something that the team is prioritizing as you continue to scale and implement new products and pricing plans? Hope to connect soon. This rep. Now, there's a lot going on here. The first thing that like went in my mind is I was like, what if I threw this into our own product? So I'm Will Allred. I'm one of the co-founders at a company called Lavender. We've got a real-time writing assistant. And so I threw this in to the writing assistant. And the first thing that comes back, of course, my computer's freezing up, so I'm trying to screen share this with y'all. But the first thing that came back was basically that these two paragraphs came back as highly informative. And so looking at our data, we see millions of emails every month. We know that these informative tones are going to drastically reduce the chance of you getting a response. And so while it's really long, and that's a huge thing that we want to cut down, that really just immediately tells me those are the two things that we should cut from this writing. And so having unique commercial terms, like your past experience isn't that important to me. I don't really care why you joined this company. You're reaching out to me in my inbox. Then this other piece about the founding team feeling these pains of usage-based pricing model, like why am I even considering using a usage-based? Like I think you skipped a couple steps before I would ever be interested in a usage-based pricing model. And then curious, is that even something that you're considering, right? So this skips way too much of a step to then finish off with this. It would be better off if they had just cut those two paragraphs altogether. Now I've taken a different approach in my rewrite, but before we do that, I want to show you the follow-up that they sent 2 days later. And the follow-up was actually what drove me to decide this was the email to rewrite this week. So 2 days later, hi, Will. Thought you may be interested in this blog post where Scott Buxton, former VP of Finance at Datadog, shares how he took their business from 20 million in ARR to 1 billion in a 6-year span with usage-based model that provided ultimate flexibility and transparency to customers. Knowing that you operate with a similar business model today, do we? Good question. Are you currently allocating too many engineering resources to upkeep your in-house billing system, fix breakages, and reintegrate whenever there are new product and pricing rollouts? At Blank, we've built a billing and analytics platform that enables companies like Case Study 1, Case Study 2, and Case Study 3, et cetera, to save hours of engineering resources on billing cost breakages and reintegrations and allocate that time to core product development. Happy to walk you through a quick demo to envision how our company can further optimize. And then they got our company name wrong, Try Lavender's billing workflow. Best will. Now, I love when companies get this wrong. So what they do is they use like a scraping tool, or they use one of these data providers to try to figure out, company names, et cetera. And the problem with this approach is we used to have a domain said it was www.trylavender.com. The company name is not Try Lavender. The company name is Lavender. And so as soon as I saw that, I knew that they were like automating through this. And so they tried to feign a lot of personalization in this first email after exploring similar tools. But it's interesting, right? They use the name correctly in one email, but incorrectly in another. It just seems like sloppy errors. So there's that one, this error here of "and am impressed." So a couple sloppy errors there that are easily avoidable. But as soon as I saw that, my immediate opinion was that the entire cadence was not personalized. There's a ton of issues with this, which is it really doesn't necessarily. The problem with this is like if you send it to the right person, maybe it's someone who has 20 million in ARR, or maybe somebody who's using this kind of billing plan. But outside of that, you're going to ostracize a large portion of your audience, which maybe that's your idea. Maybe that's what you're going for. But I think when you're in the early stages, you want to have more conversations, not less, to really figure out where that like sweet spot is for your product. And so I thought this was an interesting approach, but I think there's a better way to tackle it. So the subject shows you that I immediately went from this unpersonalized approach to a much more personalized approach, which is subject line, pay per email option, ? Which this really, usually what I would tell you is avoid punctuation within your subject lines. What you're going to end up doing is triggering the reader to think it's a sales email. What we see in our data is punctuation in general tends to get about 56% less opens than a subject line without. But in this case, it almost feels like an email coming from somebody who's interested in buying the product and they're looking for a pay per email option. And so it would pique my interest. And thusly, when I wrote it, I was like, this would be an interesting way to write this email to me. So pay per email option, ? Hey, Will, from the looks of the wizard on your website, is it fair to say y'all like to be different? We're building a product to make usage-based billing easy to implement, open to seeing if a few customers want to think differently too. Now, I didn't say too much. I didn't say too much about like our past history of, employment. It was more about me and, something we pride ourselves on, right? Like if you go to our website, you know that it's a little bit out there. It's a little bit different. And so like taking this approach would show you that I'm actually trying to write an email for you. And like as an email product, you know that nobody out there is really charging by usage, right? Most SaaS software is charging by seat. And so this like idea of like just trying to get me in the right headspace of like, hey, is this something that I would want to even have a conversation around? Now, 2 days later, here's how I'd follow up on this. I would say, thought this might spur some ideas. Well, I would then include the link, and then I would tell them why I'm sending them the blog, which is it's a blog post from Datadog's VP of Finance. Did you know usage-based pricing was the reason Datadog went from 20 million to 1 billion in ARR? I think it could apply for y'all. if we get the right prospects, let me know if you're open to brainstorming it. Yeah. P.S. Given this is totally new, we totally take on the dev work. I'm doing a few things here. One, I'm basically getting back to this like brainstorming idea that I threw out, like open to seeing if a few customers want to think differently. Then I'm offering up this blog post. The blog post is really to give some like extra credibility to this idea of thinking differently. It's like, hey, this could be something that y'all could do. If I was going to send a third email, my approach actually might be slightly different. It might be a, hey, well, clearly I'm missing the mark with this usage-based billing idea, but our tech could be applied in different ways to billing. Curious. Most startups are trying to focus engineers on core product. Do you feel like they're spending too much time with billing? Things like that are much more likely to catch my attention than this overall idea of like, hey, can you relate to this 20 million to $1 billion ARR company story? Which I'm like, I see what you're trying to do, but it doesn't quite hit for me. Especially given how foreign this concept is for what we do as a business, right? You have to realize like we are far removed from where you are within your knowledge of what you do and how you do it. And so you're having to, at least leave some breadcrumbs for me to get to the table and at least be open to a conversation. And so whether you're starting something new or you're trying to build something new on top of your existing thing, and you're trying to get feedback on it and you're trying to get new market adoption for it, one of the most critical things that you can do, and it's one of the things that we attribute back to our success at Lavender, is having a lot of these critical conversations early on. And so when you think about that strategy, that means opening yourselves up to potentially pivoting where that product goes and trying to generate as much dialogue, as much information for you to act upon as possible. And so this would be my approach. Does it scale as well as blasting this out? Maybe not, right? But it all kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And, just be sure to read your email out loud before you hit send, because this first time I read through it, I was like, oh, that's an obvious error. So like it was clear that they weren't using our tool, right? Our tool includes spelling and grammar. So I knew that right out of the gate. So it's an interesting approach, but you can't really fake personalization at the end of the game, especially when you make errors throughout the series of emails. So if you enjoyed this, be sure to check out the other videos that I've done alone, but I've also done with my co-host, Christina Fenseth. You can check them out on the Sales Hacker website. If you go over to the video section, you can also subscribe to the Sales Hacker newsletter, where you'll get these videos pretty much weekly, or subscribe on YouTube, where they're uploaded pretty much as soon as we finish hitting pause on the recording. But until next time, I'm Will Allred. One email, two takes. Appreciate y'all.